The boardroom had never been this quiet. Men in suits froze mid-breath, eyes darting toward the woman standing near the screen, still wearing her cleaning uniform, still holding a mop. The CEO stood up, jaw clenched, voice dripping with fury. "Why is the maid in here? This is a $2 billion meeting." The room shifted uncomfortably. No one moved. No one spoke. She didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed fixed on the numbers glowing on the projector. "That file," she said softly, pointing at the screen, "it's missing 2 pages, and the ones you have aren't real." A pause. Then chaos. "What did she just say?" An investor barked. The CEO turned pale. She calmly placed a folder on the table, filled with documents no one had seen, but everyone should have. And in that moment, the janitor they'd ignored for years wasn't just in the room. She owned it. Her name was Alma, to the executives at Wexler Capital. She was just the cleaner. No last name, no good mornings, no eye contact. For 10 years, she had walked the same marble halls with her head down and her cart squeaking behind her. She knew every stain on the walls, every scratch on elevators, but not a single person in the building knew the color of her eyes. Alma was quiet, not because she had nothing to say, but because long ago, life had taught her that the world only listens to certain voices, and hers wasn't one of them. She arrived every morning before the sun and stayed until the office lights flickered off. In silence, she wiped fingerprints from glass tables where billion-dollar ideas were discussed. She swept the carpet under desks where interns bragged about bonuses, and she scrubbed the corners of the boardroom floor while the most powerful man in the building, CEO Daniel Wexler, shouted about quarterly losses. He had passed her hundreds of times, not once acknowledging her presence. To him, she was furniture, a utility, a background blur. But Alma wasn't just cleaning. She was listening. Every time she lingered in the corner of that glass-walled boardroom, every time she emptied the trash while executives argued about revenue and burn rates, she was absorbing it. She didn't have a degree, but she had notebooks, dozens of them, filled with notes, terms, questions she would look up at home using the second-hand tablet she bought at a flea market. She had always been drawn to numbers, ever since she was a little girl in El Paso, solving math puzzles in the back of her mother's diner. Her dream had been to study economics. She got accepted to a community college once, even started classes, but her mother fell sick, and someone had to pay the bills. Books turned into bills. Classrooms turned into cleaning supplies. And dreams? Well, dreams got folded up and packed away. Now, at 38, Alma had a teenage daughter, Camila, who thought the world of her. Camila didn't know how smart her mother was, just that she worked hard, always smiling, even where her hands were cracked from bleach and her back ached from hours on her feet. Still, Alma never complained, until the day she saw it. She was cleaning outside conference room 7B when a presentation flashed across the screen. It was a merger proposal, some deal involving international partners, and a massive investment. Alma noticed something odd about the slide. The number didn't align. The pie chart didn't match the text. It was a mistake. A big one. She paused for a second, gripping her cloth, thinking maybe she should say something. But before she could speak, she heard a voice, Daniel's, barking orders through the glass. "Security! Why is the maid still outside the conference room?" She turned away. She didn't say a word. She never did. In that building, staff were seen, not heard. No one cared what the cleaning lady thought about cash flow statements. No one believed someone in a uniform could spot what 6 Ivy League analysts missed. So Alma swallowed the words in her throat and kept walking, but she didn't forget. And when she got home that night, she wrote it all down. Every number, every slide, every gut feeling that something was off. Because Alma had learned that silence didn't mean ignorance. Sometimes, silence was preparation. The morning of the investor meeting, Alma arrived early, like always. She clocked in before the elevators even lit up. Floor 33 was already set for something big. Fresh coffee brewing, flower arrangements perfectly placed, the boardroom buzzing with anticipation. She had cleaned that same room 1,000 times. But today, something felt heavier, tighter. Inside, a panel of investors from all over the world sat with perfectly folded hands and stony expressions. Suits worth more than her yearly salary. Slide decks open, financial graphs glowing on the big screen. She waited outside the door, holding her cleaning caddy. Unsure she should proceed, she was told this room needed to be refreshed before the 9 a.m. call. Just wipe the windows, pick up the breakfast plates. Quiet, invisible, she stepped inside slowly, eyes down, heading straight for the corner. And that's when it happened. Daniel Wexler, the CEO, towering, sharp-suited, already sweating under pressure, snapped without even looking up. Who let the maid in? This is not your place. Get out. The words sliced through the room like glass. A few board members chuckled under their breath. Others shifted awkwardly, embarrassed not for her, but for themselves. Alma froze. Every part of her wanted to disappear. I was told to clean before, she whispered. I don't care what you were told. This isn't a janitor's convention. Go, he barked. She turned without a word. Her fingers trembled as they wrapped around the handle of her cart. Her face burned, but she didn't cry. As she reached for the door, something caught her eye. A screen. It was a line of numbers. A projected quarterly growth model. She had seen that chart before, and she remembered what was missing. The ratio between two variables. It was off. The numbers looked polished, but the math was flawed. And worse, it was the same mistake she had noticed weeks ago. She stopped. Every voice in her head screamed, leave. Just go. Don't make a scene. But her body wouldn't move. Something inside her, a decade of swallowing words, 10 years of being invisible, suddenly cracked. She turned. I'm sorry, she said, voice soft but steady. But that chart is lying. The room fell into stunned silence. Daniel blinked. What did you just say? That projection. The numbers don't match the underlying cost numbers. We're overstating growth by at least 6%. And that's assuming foreign exchange rates remain stable, which they won't. The air vanished from the room. One of the investors, a silver-haired man with sharp eyes, leaned forward. Wait, he said slowly. What did she say? Another investor zoomed in on the slide. Fingers tapped on laptops. Whisper spread. She's right, someone muttered. Those numbers, they don't add up. Daniel laughed nervously. Gentlemen, please, are we seriously entertaining business advice from the cleaning staff? But no one was laughing. Alma stood still. Her hands were shaking, but her face was calm. She wasn't trying to embarrass him. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She just couldn't walk out again, not this time. The room wasn't silent anymore, it was restless. Fingers flew across keyboards. Phones buzzed. One of the younger executives squinted at the screen, lips moving as he recalculated. She's actually right, he said under his breath. The growth assumption ignores supply-side volatility. If this gets signed, we're exposed to a massive loss next quarter. Another investor snapped his fingers. Pull up last year's actuals. I want to compare them side by side. Daniel Wexler stepped forward, clearly rattled, trying to control the narrative. This is nonsense, he said, forcing a chuckle. This woman is not qualified to analyze international financial contracts. He turned to Alma, voice dripping with contempt. Even are you? She didn't flinch. She took a slow breath and said, my name is Alma Rivera, and I studied finance at Universidad Nacional de Córdoba. A pause. I left school halfway through, she added. My husband was diagnosed with cancer. We had a small business, a bakery. We trusted a vendor who altered the supply contract. By the time we figured it out, we were buried in debt. He died 6 months later, and I've been working ever since. She looked at the floor for a beat, then back up, but I never stopped studying. I read every day. I borrow investment books from the library. I take free online courses on my phone during lunch. I know I don't look like someone you'd invite into this room, but I've been listening for 10 years, and I know what I saw. One of the senior board members narrowed his eyes, leaning forward. And what exactly did you see, Miss Rivera? Alma stepped closer to the screen. On slide 16, the projections use outdated exchange rates. Slide 22 assumes a zero tax loss carry forward, which is false based on your last filing. But most importantly, she tapped the lower corner of the page. The holding company listed here doesn't exist. It was dissolved 2 years ago. Gasps. Chairs shifted. A junior executive sitting at the end of the table typed frantically, pulling up a legal registry. His eyes widened. She's right. It's been inactive since 2022. If this deal goes through with that clause, we're legally exposed, and the SEC will come down on us hard. Another board member turned to Daniel. How did this get through legal? Daniel was sweating now. We're still verifying the details. This is a complex process. No, the younger executive interrupted. He stood up, visibly uncomfortable, but firm. She's not wrong. I flagged this last week, but the file was locked. I wasn't allowed to raise concerns. The room tensed. The investors exchanged looks. The authority in the room, the one Daniel Wexler always owned, was slipping. One of the international partners, a woman with a French accent, finally spoke. I want to know why a cleaner knew more about our deal than my CEO. No one answered. Daniel adjusted his tie, eyes darting. We're derailing $1 billion deal over what janitorial gossip. But no one laughed this time, because Alma wasn't a joke. She was the only one who had told them the truth. And now, the room was listening. The silence this time was different. Not awkward, not dismissive. It was attention. Alma stood near the screen. Her cleaning cart stood beside her. A strange contrast of multi-million-dollar decisions swirling around her. A senior partner nodded once. Go on. Show us. She didn't fumble. She didn't panic. She reached into her canvas tote and pulled out a worn red folder. Dog-eared, slightly wrinkled but organized. She laid out 3 printed documents on the table. Everyone leaned in. This, she said, pointing to the first sheet, is the original deal summary your assistant printed and left behind 3 weeks ago. I saw it in the trash. This, she held up another page, is the one you just presented. The numbers have changed. The margins were quietly increased, but the legal risk stayed the same. She tapped another page. The company listed as the primary holding partner. I overheard your call with their CFO 2 weeks ago. I was dusting the hallway. He warned you, quietly, that lawsuits have been filed in the EU. He said they weren't public yet. Eyes widened. I wrote it down. I didn't know what it meant at the time. But then I found this. She held up a screenshot, a web page buried deep inside a foreign government registry. Their license is under review, and they're hiding it. A collective gasp rolled across the room. One of the analysts double-checked it on his laptop. She's not making this up, he murmured. There's a pending fraud investigation. Another board member cursed under his breath. If this deal went through with that partner, Alma continued calmly. This firm would have absorbed not just a dead holding company, but legal liabilities across 3 countries. A woman in a gray pantsuit stood. How the hell did we miss this? Daniel Wexler, pale and sweating, barked. This is irrelevant. She's not a part of this team. We don't even know how she got this information. I was cleaning your hallway, Alma replied quietly. You didn't lower your voice. Then someone at the end of the table clicked on their laptop. Their security footage, she said. Everyone turned. And suddenly, on the big screen meant for market projections and pie charts, appeared a muted clip. Daniel, standing in the hallway, yelling, "This is not your place. Get out." His voice echoed in the boardroom, like a ghost from just minutes ago. The clip played again, in slow motion. The tone, the arrogance, the dismissal. Now everyone had seen it. The investor with the sharpest suit and coldest eyes finally spoke. She saved us. He turned slowly to Daniel. You almost destroyed us. The CEO's mouth opened, then closed again. No one spoke in his defense. A senior board member raised his hand, all in favor of initiating a vote of no confidence. Hands lifted, one by one. Unanimous. Daniel didn't argue. He just stood there, looking like a man who had built his empire on glass. and watched it crack in the touch of someone he thought couldn't even read a balance sheet. As he walked out, no tie, no title, he passed Alma without looking at her. But the whole room was still watching her. And for the first time, they didn't see a uniform. They saw mine. 3 days later, Alma was back in the same boardroom. Only this time, she wasn't holding a mop. She was sitting at the table. In front of her sat a crisp envelope with the Wexler Capital logo. Her name printed on it in gold. Junior Analyst, Strategic Risk Division. One of the board members smiled warmly as he handed it to her. We don't want to lose the sharpest mind in the building just because she was holding a broom. Alma blinked back tears, fingers trembling slightly as she took the offer letter. It wasn't about the job title. It was about being seen, heard, respected. Her daughter, Camila, waited for her outside the glass doors, bouncing excitedly on her toes. The same board had quietly approved a full scholarship to a private STEM academy after seeing her grades. Smart must run in the family. One investor had joked. That night, Alma sat at the kitchen table. Same plastic chair, same chipped cup of coffee. Except now, something was different. Next to her cleaning gloves sat a course catalog from the local university. She had already signed up for evening business classes. For the first time in 2 decades, Alma Rivera was going back to school. Meanwhile, things at Wexler Capital began to shift. A new diversity policy was introduced across all departments. Voices once ignored were now given seats at the table. Interns from local communities were brought in. The new CEO, a woman, made it clear talent has no dress code. Alma became more than just an employee. She became a symbol. 6 months later, she stood behind a podium at a women's empowerment event downtown. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her voice calm but commanding. Behind her was a screen showing a faded photo of her in her old uniform, mop in hand, beside her new office badge. She looked out at the audience. Young women, single mothers, janitors, cashiers, students. I used to think success was something you had to be born into, she said. But now I know, sometimes you just have to stay in the room long enough to be heard. The applause was thunderous. As she stepped off stage, a little girl in the front row tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "I want to be like you." Alma knelt down, smiled, and replied, "No, be better."